In a quiet neighborhood in Quezon City, a gunshot shattered more than just the silence of the night. It destroyed 3 lives forever. A successful businessman, his wife, a beloved teacher, her mother, a widow. What could possibly drive a woman to pull the trigger on the man she once vowed to love? This is the story of the most unthinkable betrayal when trust, love, and family collide with forbidden desire and deadly consequences. How far would you go if you discovered your mother was sleeping with your husband? What happens when people you trust most become your worst nightmare? Stay with us as we uncover every twisted detail of this shocking true story. You won't believe where this all leads. Meet Andrea Baltazar, a 34-year-old Filipino art teacher at a prestigious private school in Manila. Her classroom is a sanctuary of creativity filled with the colorful chows of young minds, brush strokes of joy, and the laughter of students who adore her. She's a woman who's loved and respected by her students, a nurturing figure in their lives. Yet, in her own, something has been missing for years. Andrea's life appears perfect. She has a career she's passionate about, a loving husband, a home. But there's a struggle she's been fighting alone, a battle many never see. For the past 8 years, Andrea and her husband have been trying to have a child. They've gone through countless doctors, endless tests, and yet nothing. She's been grappling with the silent ache of infertility, an emptiness that grows with each passing year. The dream of motherhood slipping further out of reach. She pours all her emotions into her art, hiding the pain in the strokes off the brush, masking her sorrow with the beauty she creates. But some wounds run too deep to cover up. Could the very thing she's been yearning for come from the one person she trusts most? What happens when a family is torn apart by the very thing Andrea wants most? Stay with us as we uncover the threads that bind threads that will soon unravel in the most unexpected way. Now meet Ramon Baltazar, or Remy as his friends call him. At 38, Remy is the embodiment of success, a Filipino investment banker and financial consultant at the top of his game, a man who has carved out a name for himself in the high-stakes world of Manila's business elite, with a reputation built on ambition, charisma, and a network of well-placed connections. His career trajectory seems unstoppable. From a prominent Manila family, Ray's success is no accident. It's the result of years of hard work, calculated risks, and the kind of charm that makes doors swing open without hesitation. Everyone knows Remy. He's the guy you call when you need a deal done, a strategy perfected, or advice that carries weight. But behind the tailored suits and the high-profile meetings lies a man with a secret that will change everything. Ray's external success is matched only by his inner turmoil. Though his professional life is thriving, his marriage to Andrea is not. The gap between them, once small, has only grown as the years passed. Ray's longing for something more, something his wife cannot give him, has become impossible to ignore. His ambition, once purely career-driven, has now shifted towards a desire for deeper, forbidden satisfaction. While Andrea battles her own demons, Remy is caught between his loyalty to her and the temptation that's always just out of reach, a temptation that soon enough will destroy everything's worked so hard to build. How far will Remy go to keep his carefully crafted life intact? Or will the pressure of his desires hidden for so long shatter everything he's built? What happens when a man with everything to lose finally reaches the point of no return? Stay with us as we uncover the shocking twist that will reveal the real cost of ambition. Now, let's meet Trachita Tessa Domingo. At 56, Tessa's life has shifted dramatically since the death of her husband 5 years ago. Once a vibrant, energetic woman who worked as a hotel manager in Dubai, she returned to the Philippines to care for her daughter Andrea and to settle into a quieter, more solitary existence. Once Tessa's life was filled with the bustle of Dubai's hotel corridors, where she ran the show with confidence. But now, back in the Philippines, the woman who once thrived in a foreign land now lives a quiet, almost forgotten life in Marina, a widow for 5 years. She has tried to fill the space left by her late husband with memories, but time, it seems, has turned her vibrant spirit into something more lonely. Tessa's loneliness is a weight she carries in silence. She spends her days sifting through old photos, Memories of a time when she was part of something larger, a time when life had a clear direction. But now, with Andrea grown and married, Tessa's life feels smaller, quieter, and more distant. But there is more to Tessa than the woman lost in the past. What seems like a quiet, lonely existence holds secrets, shadows that have been buried deep, waiting to emerge. And when those secrets do surface, the ripple effect will change everything. What happens when a mother's hidden desires clash with the daughter she spent her life protecting? Can love and loyalty survive when the past threatens to destroy the future? From the outside, Andrea and Remy's life seems flawless. A picture-perfect facade that hides the turmoil bubbling underneath. Their home, nestled in an upscale Quezon City subdivision, stands as a testament to their success. Large, well-manicured lawns, a beautiful garden, and a spacious house adorned with family portraits. This is the life they've built, a life admired by everyone who knows them. The neighbors look on in envy, seeing nothing but a harmonious couple at the height of their success. They are the couple everyone admires, the ones who seem to have it all, involved in the community, active in church activities, and always ready to lend a helping hand. Their weekly family dinners with Tessa, Andrea's mother, are the heart of their routine, a tradition cherished by all. Andrea and Tessa's bond runs deep, mother and daughter, best friends, confidants. They've been through so much together, but nothing could break the strength of their connection. Or so Andrea thought, but appearances can be deceiving. Beneath the surface of their perfect suburban life, cracks are beginning to form. The community sees a couple in sync, a mother and daughter living in harmony. But Andrea's inner world is far from peaceful. Remy, too, is fighting a quiet battle, a battle he hasn't yet confessed to anyone. Every perfect facade hides a darker truth, and in this case, the truth is far from what anyone expects. How long can a family keep up the appearance of happiness when buried secrets threaten to shatter it all? And what happens when the foundation of trust is tested by the people you love most? But beneath the surface of Sunday dinners and family photos, something dark was growing. Ray's eyes lingered longer than they should have. Tessa's evenings stretched into the silence of solitude. And Andrea, well, Andrea's tired eyes saw things she couldn't quite understand yet, each of them lost in their own hidden turmoil. But what happens when those unspoken truths finally collide? What secrets lie just beneath the surface of the life they've carefully crafted? How long can they pretend before everything unravels? For 3 long years, Andrea and Remy fought a battle they couldn't win. 3 years of failed IVF treatments, each failure leaving its mark on their hearts. Few aid of hope. Time and time again. Over 500,000 Philippine pesos spent. Money, time, and energy drained into a dream that now seemed increasingly impossible. The financial burden weighs heavily on Andrea's shoulders, each bill a reminder that their dream of a child slips further from their grasp. But as the emotional toll grew, so did the distance between them. Remy, once her supportive partner, was now working late more and more, escaping into his career as a way to avoid facing the growing cracks in their relationship. Remy, always the go-getter, poured himself into his work. It was easier than facing the silence that had begun to fill their home. And as he disappeared into the office, Andrea found herself pouring everything into her art. Teaching, exhibitions, anything to keep her mind occupied. Art became her escape. But even the brush strokes couldn't erase the growing tension between them. Every failed attempt, every mounting bill added another layer to the wall that was slowly building between Andrea and Remy. Where once there was passion and connection, now there were only words left unspoken. Arguments began to erupt more frequently, small cracks that over time would grow into chasms. Their bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield. The distance grew, and with it the quiet fear that maybe they were no longer the same people who fell in love. What happens when love starts to fade, and the dreams they once shared feel more like burdens? Can they ever find their way back, or are they already too far apart? Since her husband's death 5 years ago, Tessa's life has become a quiet echo of what it once was. The widow's pension she receives barely covers her basic needs, a stark contrast to the comfortable life she once led in Dubai. Her adult daughter, Andrea, has your own family now, a successful career, and a home full of life. But Andrea's busy life leaves little room for Tessa's needs. The once close bond between them is now strained by time and distance. Once Tessa's days were filled with excitement, managing hotels, meeting people from all walks of life. But now in the quiet of her retirement, the contrast is stark. Memories of a vibrant life abroad clash with the reality of stillness of her home. Tessa fills her days with small acts of purpose, volunteering at the animal shelter, joining church groups, and trying to stay active. But even amidst the company of others, she feels invisible. The warmth she once received from her family and community now seems distant, as if she's fading into the background of her own life. She tries to fill the void. She joins church groups, offering her time and energy, hoping that somewhere, somehow, she'll find the connection she's been missing. But still, the loneliness lingers. It follows her like a shadow. Her daughter is too busy. Her life is too quiet. And yet, a part of Tessa knows something is missing. A longing she hasn't been able to shake. A piece of herself she can't quite find anymore. Tessa has given so much, first to her husband, then to her daughter. But now she wonders, where is the love, the connection, the sense of purpose that once defined her? What happens when a mother's longing goes unanswered? Can silence she's learned to live with ever be broken? And what happens when the choices she's made in the past begin to catch up with her? As the days went by, something began to shift. Remy, feeling the strain in his own marriage, started visiting Tessa's home at first just to check in to make sure she was okay. But soon those visits became more frequent. It started innocently enough. Andrea, caught up in her art exhibition prep, would ask Remy, "Can you check on Mama?" And Remy, always the beautiful son-in-law, would oblige. But what began as a simple favor soon became something else. Tessa, so used to the quiet of her own home, welcomed the company. Ray's presence filled the space, and for a brief moment, she didn't feel invisible. The two would sit together, conversations flowing over cold bottles of San Miguel beer and Tessa's home-cooked adobo, a dish she had perfected over the years. Conversations that once felt mundane now held a new weight. They shared confidences about their pasts, their losses, their disappointments. Remy spoke of Thestrus, of his career, and Tessa shared stories of her time in Dubai. Both, it seemed, were looking for something they were no longer getting from their respective relationships. These quiet moments, these shared secrets began to blur the lines. What was once a simple act of checking on a mother-in-law had grown into something far more complicated, a dangerous setup for something neither could yet see coming. But sometimes, it's the smallest moments, the fleeting touches, the shared glances that set the stage for the most dangerous of betrayals. What happens when the bonds of family begin to twist and stretch? When shared confidences turn into dangerous desires? Can the line between friendship and betrayal remain clear? The weight of his frustration was growing heavier with each passing day. Remy, the successful businessman, the man everyone looked up to, found himself struggling to hold it all together. He longed for connection, but the distance between him and Andrea had become too vast. Andrea doesn't even look at him anymore. The once fiery connection between them had faded into the background of her work, her art, her dream of motherhood. And Remy, he was being left behind, alone in the house they built together. Tessa's need for attention, for love, was more than just the loneliness of widowhood. She had poured so much into others over the years, but now no one seemed to notice her. Not her daughter, not even Remy. For Tessa, it wasn't just about being loved. It was about being seen, not as Sandria's mother, not as a widow, but as the woman she once was, alive, vibrant, full of possibility. And now in her quiet home, she felt invisible. Meanwhile, Andrea remained blissfully unaware of the tension building around her. She was consumed with her work, her students, and her art. The dream of a child, the hope that had once fueled her and raised life, had become a constant take in the background. But the gap between them was widening, and she hadn't even noticed. Andrea was lost in her own world, her students, her exhibitions, her unfulfilled dream of becoming a mother. Ray's frustrations, Tessa's loneliness, all faded into the background. Her mind was consumed with the idea of what she didn't have rather than what was slipping away from her right in front of her. 3 people, 3 struggles, but only one truth. Sometimes it takes losing everything to see what's been right in front of you all along. It was a rainy evening in June 2023 when Remy arrived at Tessa's house. Under the guise of fixing a leaking roof, the rain had begun to fall heavily, and the darkness outside seemed to creep into the house, casting long shadows over the quiet, familiar space. It was the kind of night that invited secrets to surface, the kind of night when the world outside felt distant and the warmth of the home became a refuge from everything else. And for Tessa, the presence of Remy, once a son-in-law, now something more, felt like the comfort she hadn't realized she needed. Remy sat down his bag and with a casual smile took a look at the roof. But as the evening wore on, the air between them grew heavier, charged with unspoken words. One drink turned into 2, and then 3. The room, once quiet and calm, seemed to pulse with an energy neither of them could explain. The distance between them, which had always been so defined, started to fade, and soon their conversation took a turn towards something more intimate. "You remind me of your father when we first met. It wasn't just the alcohol. It was years of silence, the years of loneliness that made her words so potent." Remy, for a moment, was transported back to a time when his own father had spoken those words. Tessa's voice pulled him closer, drawing him in with a power he didn't expect. And then it happened. The touch lingered, the air shifted, and before either of them could stop it, their lips met in a kiss that shouldn't have happened. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Remy knew it. Tessa knew it. But in the blur of loneliness, frustration, and unspoken desires, it felt inevitable. And for a moment, they both allowed themselves to forget the consequences, the people they were betraying. What happens when the line between family and temptation is crossed? Can the guilt ever be undone? Or does this betrayal set in motion something they can't take back? 3 months passed. What started as a slip-up, an innocent touch, a stolen kiss, quickly spiraled into something darker, something both Tessa and Remy couldn't control. Their secret meetings became more frequent, their need for each other growing stronger with each passing day. "Andrea and I are basically roommates now. She doesn't look at me, doesn't even notice when I'm home anymore. What's the point of pretending?" On the afternoon, the family gathered for a celebration at Tessa's house, a casual family affair, nothing out of the ordinary. But for Remy and Tessa, the weight of the secret between them hung thick in the air. "I've been dead for 5 years. I deserve to feel alive." Tessa's 56th birthday. Another family gathering. Another chance for Remy and Tessa to pretend everything is normal. Andrea gives a heartfelt toast to her mother. Unaware of the storm brewing between them. Despite their justifications, the guilt is always there, unavoidable, impossible to ignore. The faces they wear, the masks they put on for the world, cannot hide what they are feeling deep inside. How much longer can they live in this tangled web of lies before it all comes crashing down? And when the truth finally comes to light, who will be left standing? It was the small things that began to unravel their carefully constructed lies, signs too subtle to ignore, but too obvious to ignore forever. Little clues that Andrea in her oblivion never picked up on, but the closer she looked, the more she would see the truth. One evening after Remy returned home from a business trip, Andrea noticed something odd. The faint scent of unfamiliar perfume lingering on his bong. It was subtle, but enough to raise suspicion in her mind. Tessa, on the heart of their family gatherings, started canceling their weekly dinners. First, it was a scheduling conflict. Then, she was too tired, and eventually it became a regular occurrence. Ray's phone, once easily accessible, was now always face down, even when they were alone together. And the brief moments when it was face up, his hands would hover protectively over it, as if afraid someone might see something they weren't supposed to. Andrea, in the process of organizing their finances, noticed strange charges on their credit card. Motel, expensive restaurants, bouquets of flowers, none of them ever for her. Tessa, once so comfortable and open with Andrea, started avoiding her gaze. When they were together, there was a nervous energy between them. Tessa's glances darting away whenever Andrea looked her way, as if she couldn't face the truth. How much longer can they keep pretending? What will happen when Andrea starts connecting the dots? Andrea's suspicion had been building piece by piece: the strange perfume, the cancellationers, the phone that was never quite within reach, and then there were the credit card charges, the motel, the expensive meals, the flowers she never received. Each clue added weight to her growing doubts. The doubt couldn't be ignored any longer. Andrea, unable to shake the feeling that something was wrong, decided to follow Remy one evening. She waited until he left the house, his briefcase in hand. Heading to his car, with quiet determination, she followed him from a distance, her heart racing in her chest. The final straw came when Remy told Andrea he was going out of town for a business dinner. But when Andrea contacted his colleagues the next morning, the stories didn't match. No one had heard of the dinner, and no one knew where Remy had gone that night. What happens when Andrea finally uncovers the truth? Will she confront Remy, or will the secret destroy everything before she can even ask the questions that have been burning inside her? Andrea's mind was in turmoil, consumed by the weight of the truth she could no longer deny. The once steady rhythm of her life was now a series of restless nights, haunted by suspicion she couldn't shake. Slowly, the emotional toll began to show, first in her physical appearance, then in her interactions with others. Andrea's students, usually the center of her attention, began to notice the change in her. Her focus wavered in class, her once enthusiastic teaching style now distant and robotic. The spark in her eyes, the one that made her beloved by her students, was now a faint flicker. One afternoon after class, Andrea's best friend and fellow teacher, Clara, pulled her aside. Clara, who had always been more perceptive of the two, could see the signs of Andrea's distress. Later that evening, after another long day of teaching and pretending everything was fine, Andrea found herself alone in the living room. The weight of the evidence, the phone bills, the motel charges, the late-night visits, was too much to ignore any longer. Her mind circled back to the most impossible thought, the one that had been lurking in the deepest corners of her consciousness. Too painful to admit, could it really be her mother? Could Tessa, the woman who had always been her rock, be involved in this betrayal? Can Andrea bring herself to confront the woman she's trusted the most, or will the emotional toll break her before she even gets the chance to face the truth? The days blurred together for Andrea. The truth she was avoiding, the truth she was terrified to face, gnawed at her relentlessly. Was it paranoia, or was her suspicion, her gut feeling, finally leading her to the truth? Sleep had become a foreign concept. Every night, Andrea tossed and turned, haunted by the possibility of the truth. She couldn't shut off her mind. The same thoughts cycling over and over, images of Remy with someone else, the phone calls, the visits to Tessa's house. The breaking point came one night when Andrea's fears pushed her past the point of no return. She couldn't take the uncertainty anymore. She had to know, even if it destroyed her. Ray's phone call earlier that evening had been the final straw. He said he was working late, but Andrea knew he wasn't. So she followed him. Andrea parked her car at a distance, just outside the motel. Hidden in the shadows, she sat there for hours, watching as the night deepened, each passing minute adding to her growing dread. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. She couldn't bring herself to go inside, but she couldn't leave either. The door was open now, the possibility of confirmation just within her reach. The hours pass in a blur. The motel lights flicker, casting shadows that seem to dance around her. Andrea watches as figures move inside, but she can't make herself look closely enough. She doesn't want to confirm what she's afraid of. She doesn't want to lose everything, but she's too terrified to walk away. What will happen when Andrea finally faces the truth? Will she be able to confront Remy, or will the weight of her suspicions destroy her before she even has a chance to act? It was a Saturday afternoon, the 19th of August, 2023. The school exhibition had been set up earlier than expected, and Andrea finally had a rare moment of peace. The weight of the past few months, filled with doubts, fears, sleepless nights, had worn her down, but she couldn't ignore the longing to find comfort in the one place that had always offered solace: her mother's home. Andrea drives through the city streets, her mind a blur of thoughts. The familiar route to her mother's house, the way she'd always driven it, felt different today. The car hummed softly under her, the sun shining down through the car windows. But inside, Andrea was anything but calm. She couldn't escape the gnawing unease, the sense that something was about to change. Andrea steps out of the car, carrying the small bouquet of flowers and the fresh bread from the bakery. To simple, comforting gestures, her hand shakes slightly, but she tells herself it's nothing. She smiles as she walks toward the front door, but there's a knot in her stomach. When the door opens, the air shifts immediately. There, standing in front of her is Tessa, but it's not just her mother. Behind Tessa stands Remy. Her heart skips a beat. Her blood runs cold. They're too close, too intimate, their body language betraying a familiarity that Andrea never wanted to see. What will Andrea do now that the truth is staring her in the face? Will she confront the betrayal that shattered her world? Or will the weight of this revelation destroy everything she's known? The gate to Tessa's house was slightly open, as if inviting Andrea in, yet warning her all the same. The sense of familiarity of home was still there, but now it felt more like an ominous threshold. Andrea's hands trembled as she pushed the gate open, her heart pounding in her chest. Her instinct screamed at her to turn around and leave, but something inside her refused to. Remy's car was parked behind the house, hidden from the street, just another sign that something wasn't right. The sight of it, so familiar, yet so out of place, made Andrea's stomach turn. The living room was dim, curtains drawn, just as she remembered it, quiet, still like nothing had changed. But the weight of the silence felt heavy, suffocating. The house that hadn't been a sanctuary now felt like a prison. Sounds from the bedroom, a rustle of movement, muffled voices. Andrea froze in the doorway, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. She hesitated for a moment, her body trembling before she took a step forward, her mind racing. The room, once a place of warmth and childhood memories, felt cold now. The bed where her parents had once slept was disheveled, clothes scattered across the floor, and there they were, Remy and her mother, entwined, naked, in the bed where Andrea had spent so many nights as a child. The shock of seeing them like this hit Andrea like a physical blow, making it hard to breathe. Andrea's world crumbled in that instant. The scream that tore from her throat was raw and full of pain, echoing off the walls of the room. The sound of it felt like a crack in her heart, the noise of her innocence shattering. Tessa, still crying, her face twisted in regret, took a shaky step toward Andrea. Remy, struggling to dress himself, stammered, trying to explain, to justify. Andrea couldn't breathe, her chest constricted with pain, her mind whirling with disbelief. She backed away from them both, unable to process the words, the apologies, the pleas. She felt the walls closing in, suffocating her until she couldn't bear it any longer. Will Andrea ever be able to forgive her mother and husband, or is this the breaking point? The moment that changes everything forever. Andrea drove for hours that evening, lost in the streets off Metro Manila. The road was an endless stretch of confusion, a blur of street lights and headlights passing by, the noise of the city fading into the background. She ended up at Manila Bay. The sun had just set, casting an orange glow over the water, the horizon stretching out in front of her. It should have been peaceful. It should have been beautiful, but nothing felt beautiful anymore. Andrea pulled out her phone and dialed Clara, her best friend. The phone rang once, then twice. Finally, Clara picked up, but Andrea couldn't find the words. She was too numb, too broken. She didn't know how long she stayed there, sitting in her car outside a church. The dim light of the cross above the door cast long shadows across the pavement. It was a place of supposed peace, but there was no peace in her anymore. At midnight, Andrea finally returned home. The house was empty, silent, as though no one had ever lived there. Remy hadn't returned yet. His absence filled the room with a suffocating emptiness that matched the coldness in her chest. The house felt unfamiliar now. A place where she'd once felt safe now turned into a prison of memories. Every room seemed to mock her, reminding her of what she'd lost. With a sudden, violent motion, Andrea picks up the frame and smashes it against the bathroom sink. The glass shatters, and she stands there, gasping for air, her tears mingling with the broken shards on the floor. Andrea's sobs turn into silent gasps as the tears stop flowing, leaving her hollow. She stands up, wiping her face with the back of her hand. There's nothing left to cry about. She's past the point of grieving now. She feels only one thing, rage. At 3 a.m., Remy finally came home. He opened the door, expecting the usual reception, but Andrea was waiting in the living room. Her face, eerily calm, looked up at him as he stepped inside. Remy tried to explain, to beg her to understand. Has stumbled over his words as if searching for the right one to make it all go away. But Andrea didn't answer. She remained silent, her expression still. Remy followed her, still talking, trying to justify himself. But Andrea's silence was like a wall he couldn't break. His words bounced off her, useless. As she walked toward the bedroom, the gun, a .45 caliber pistol, was kept in the bedside drawer. For security, a tool meant to protect them, to keep them safe. But now it would serve a different purpose. Ray's eyes widen in shock and fear as he realizes what Andrea is holding. His voice trembles as he steps back, his hands raised in a half-hearted attempt to calm her. Will Andrea pull that trigger, or is this the moment where everything truly breaks? Apart, it was 3:30 a.m. The house was still, suffocating as Andrea stood in the living room, the gun trembling in her hands. Her mind was a blur, rationality slipping away with every beat of her heart. She felt numb, her body shaking with the weight of what was about to happen. Please, Andrea, let's talk about this. Please, we can fix this. I leave her. I'll do whatever you want. Just put the gun down. Andrea's face, once full of love and trust, now looked empty. Broken. She had loved him. She had trusted him. But everything had been shattered in a single moment of betrayal. And now there was nothing left but this final confrontation. Remy in his panic lunged forward. Was he trying to grab the gun, or was he trying to embrace her? He was desperate, driven by the need to calm her, to stop this madness from spiraling out of control. But Andrea wasn't looking for solace. She was beyond reason now. Ray's body jerked violently as the bullet hit him. His breath hitched in a final gasp of shock and pain, and he collapsed to the floor, clutching his chest. The blood began to seep through his white shirt, staining it quickly as he gasped for air, his face contorting in agony. Andrea stood frozen, the gun falling from her hand, the weight of what she'd just done crashing down on her all at once. Reality shattered into fragments as she stared at her husband, Heron's beloved husband, on the floor, his life slipping away. The air was thick with the scent of blood, the silence deafening. The sound of sirens blared in the distance, growing louder by the second. Paramedics arrived at the scene, followed by police officers securing the perimeter. The neighbors, drawn by the commotion, gathered outside, murmuring to each other in disbelief. Andrea, still in shock, sat on the floor, blood in her hands, her eyes unfocused as she tried to process what she had just done. Will Remy survive? And how will Andre face the consequences of the irreversible decision she's just made? Andrea was arrested at the scene, her hands still stained with blood, her body numb with shock. The paramedics rushed Remy to the hospital, his condition critical. Multiple surgeries were required to stabilize him. The bullet had missed his heart by only 2 in. Bullet was lodged near his spine, leaving him in a fragile state. Detective Laura Santiago was assigned to the case, a seasoned investigator. She quickly realized the complexity of the situation. Interviews were conducted with neighbors, friends, and family. What she uncovered made the case even more complicated than it already seemed. Tessa refused to speak to the police, retreating into isolation after the shooting. She was devastated by what had happened, but the truth was too hard to face. She couldn't bring herself to explain her actions or face her daughter, now the perpetrator of a crime she had indirectly set into motion. The shock waves of the shooting reverberated through Quezon City. The community, once supportive of the family, was divided. Neighbors whispered in hushed tones, unsure of what to think. Some sympathized with Andrea, while others condemned her violent actions. Social media exploded with opinions. Twitter, Facebook, and news outlets were flooded with posts and reactions. Hashtags like #Justice for Andrea and #Mothers and Sons trended, sparking fierce debates. The national spotlight was on Andrea, turning her private tragedy into a public spectacle. The investigation revealed damning evidence that painted a picture of a premeditated affair. rather than a spontaneous what-I mistake. Phone records showed frequent secret calls between Remy and Tessa, including late-night messages, motel receipts, recovered text messages, and even witnesses who had seen Remy's car at Tessa's house painted a clear picture of the affair. As the story spread through the media, Andrea's case became a sensation. National news outlets covered the case extensively, focusing on the shocking betrayal and the violent aftermath. Ethics debates raged on television talk shows, a skin-burning question. What would you do if you were in Andrea's shoes? What will happen to Andrea now? Will the court show mercy, or will she pay the price for taking the law into her own hands? The trial was set into motion. The prosecution, led by Eddie Victorino Reyes, had a clear argument: attempted murder. Reyes painted a picture of a woman who had calculated her actions despite the emotional chaos she was enduring. On the other side, Eddie Gloria Fernandez, representing Andrea, argued that Andrea's actions were the result of extreme emotional disturbance, a temporary lapse in judgment triggered by the discovery of her mother and husband's affair. She argued that Andrea had suffered severe emotional trauma and PTSD from the betrayal. Eddie Fernandez called upon several character witnesses to testify on Andrea's behalf. Students, colleagues, and even the local priestess had known Andrea for years. They painted a picture of a kind, dedicated woman who had been driven to the edge by a series of traumatic events. A psychological evaluation was presented, revealing the extent of Andrea's trauma. The evaluation showed that Andrea had been suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, due to the emotional toll of the affair and the subsequent breakdown of her marriage. Andrea was called to the stand. As she stood there facing the jury, she broke down completely. The floodgates of her grief opened, and she could no longer hold back the pain that had been eating at her for so long. Remy, despite his injuries, was called to testify. His remorse was evident as he admitted to the affair, though he tried to justify his actions. Andrea's best friend, Clara, also testified. She presented text messages between her and Andrea, showing how Andrea's mental state had deteriorated over the months leading to the shooting. In an unexpected turn, Tessa refused to testify in court. Instead, she submitted a written statement, taking full responsibility for the affair and its consequences. She expressed regret for the damage she had caused, but remained silent in the face of her daughter's pain. After 5 tense days of deliberation, the jury returned to the courtroom. The entire community and the media waited anxiously outside, hoping for a verdict that would bring resolution to the emotional turmoil that had torn apart this family. The jury's verdict was read aloud: guilty of serious physical injuries, a lesser charge than attempted murder. The courtroom gasped, a mixture of disbelief and relief in the air. Andrea remained stoic, her face unchanged as the words echoed through the room. The judge sentenced Andrea to 6 years of imprisonment with the possibility offer only after 4 years. She was also ordered to undergo mandatory psychological counseling and complete anger management program. Andrea, currently serving her sentence at the Correctional Institution for Women in Mandaluyong. Andrea has become a model prisoner. In a life filled with remorse and solitude, she found solace in teaching art to her fellow inmates, pouring her energy into helping them express their pain in ways she never could before. Art became her escape, just as it once was in her teaching career. And the prison walls, once confining, now offered her a space to heal in the most unlikely of places. Her divorce from Remy was finalized during the trial, and she had no contact with him after the verdict. Andrea's world has shrunk, her contact with the outside world strictly limited, and her life now revolves around the 4 walls of her cell. She remains eligible for parole in 2026, but for now, her future isn't certain. A quiet life behind bars that feels both like a punishment and a twisted form of redemption. Remy served the shooting, though the bullet's proximity to his spine left him with permanent back pain. His body, once full of vitality and ambition, now bore the scars of his betrayal. He moved to Quezon City, hoping to start fresh to erase the memories of his past mistakes. Working remotely in finance, Remy tried to rebuild his life, and in 2025, he married attempting to find peace in the wake of the devastation he had caused. Remy has no contact with Tessa. Their once close relationship now feels like a distant memory. Remy has tried to move forward, but the remorse for the damage he caused Andrea and Tessa lingers, haunting him in ways he cannot escape. Tessa, who had once been full of life, now lives in complete isolation in her Marina home. Her health has deteriorated dramatically. Diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, she has withdrawn from the world. She refuses all visitors except for her home health aide, spending her days in the house that once held the warmth of family, but now feels like a tomb. The human she once was is unrecognizable, consumed by guilt and regret. Tessa has aged 20 years. In the span of just a few months, her guilt is a constant weight in her shoulders, one that she cannot escape. Andrea refuses all contact from her mother, unable to reconcile the betrayal with the woman who had once been her mother. Tessa remains like a shadow in the house she once shared with Andrea, but the mother-daughter bond is beyond repair. The story of the Baltazar family became a cautionary tale in Quezon City. The scandal shook the community, and the events that unfolded were discussed in schools, churches, and homes. It was a topic of conversation for months as people tried to make sense of the tragedy that had played out before their eyes. Family counseling services saw an increase in demand as others tried to cope with their repercussions of the affair, violence, and betrayal. The media continued to cover the case, with national news outlets and television debates focused on the story of Andrea's actions and the aftermath of the affair. Talk shows aired What Would You Do? Segments exploring the moral dilemmas on Dreyfus and asking viewers to imagine themselves in her shoes. What happens when a family's secrets spill out into public, when a mother, daughter, and husband are torn apart by betrayal? Can't they ever heal? Or is it too late to fix what was broken? 3 lives destroyed by choices made in secrecy and selfishness. Choices that were small at first, but grew into something unrecognizable until there was nothing left but the wreckage. A mother who forgot her daughter's heart. A husband who forgot his vows. A wife who forgot everything but her pain. In every relationship, there are moments of choice. The choice to be honest, even when it's hard. The choice to leave rather than betray. The choice to seek help rather than seek revenge. The foundation of every family is trust. When that trust is broken, the damage is irreversible. Betrayal doesn't just hurt the person who's betrayed, it shatters everything. How quickly life can shatter when the wrong choices are made. The story of Andrea, Remy, and Tessa is a cautionary tale, one that underscores the cost of betrayal and the irreversible damage it can cause. Their story is not just about a crime, it's about the choices that led up to it. The small moments when they chose deceit over honesty, when they chose silence over confrontation, and when they chose to act on forbidden desire rather than face the consequences of their actions. Betrayal leaves wounds that time cannot heal. Violence never heals wounds. It only leaves scars, both seen and unseen. In every relationship, there are moments of choice. The choice to be honest, the choice to leave rather than betray, the choice to seek help when we're broken rather than seeking revenge. Andrea pulled the trigger once, but Remy and Tessa pulled the trigger on their family 100 times before that. With every lie, every secret meeting, every betrayal, the question isn't just who's guilty of the crime, it's who's responsible for the tragedy. 3 lives that will never be whole again, and a community that will forever remember the tragedy of choices we can't undo. History isn't just about one family in the Philippines. It's about the choices we all face when we're tested, when betrayal, trust, and pain collide. What happens when we let our emotions cloud our judgment? What happens when we let a single decision shape the rest of our lives? What would you do if you discovered this betrayal? Would you be able to forgive? Or would the pain drive you to act? Do you think Andrea's sentence was just? Or did she deserve something different? Could this tragedy have been prevented in the first place? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one, and we want to hear what you think about this heartbreaking story. If this story moved you, hit that like button and share it with someone you think needs to hear it. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We post true crime documentaries every week, diving into the darkest corners of human nature and the shocking decisions that change lives forever.